Hi, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Celine, and I am with the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. We're going to get started with our next stories with scientists today. You'll have to excuse me. I had to run upstairs and get my charger, so I'm a little out of breath. Let's see. Okay. So today, our second story of the day is from Kathryn Reusch. Kathryn has a really cool journey, and let's go ahead and ask her. As she's joining, we're just going to go over some housekeeping with everybody. We are looking at all of the chat and all of the comments. So, hi, Kathryn.
Hi.
I'm just letting everybody know that we're keeping an eye on these comments. We're saying hi, hello to everybody. We won't shout you out by username. We'll just say hi and read your comments. But if you want to give Kathryn kudos, have any questions for her, that's the best way to do it today. How are you doing, Kathryn?
I'm doing all right, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing great. I was just apologizing. I had to run upstairs to get my computer charger, which is keeping all the technology going. So I'm a little winded, so excuse me.
No problem.
So Kathryn, you are a conservation technician in anthropology at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. Is that correct?
Yes, I am conservation technician.
What does that mean?
And so what that means is that basically in the conservation department, if anything in the museum, the objects, the collections, gets broken, it comes to us in conservation and we assess it and repair it and basically do as much as we can to stabilize whatever might be damaged or broken before it either goes back on display or goes back into the collection spaces.
That's really, really cool. So what was your journey to get there? Can you tell us a little bit about what education and experiences led to you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I basically when I was about 9 years old or so, I live across the street from Stanley Lake Library, and I was about 9 or so, and it was the summer, and my mom suggested that I go across the street to the library and get some books to entertain myself. And I wandered into the nonfiction section, discovered the books on ancient Egypt, and that was it. Basically, I was hooked at that point. I wanted to be an archaeologist. And so basically I went through school and I did a lot of kind of probably more classes than I needed to in high school, but that was because my maternal grandparents are English, my mother's English, and they suggested going to school in the UK, doing university in the UK. So I thought that was really cool. So I did a lot of probably too many courses in high school. I was the, that kind of nerdy kid who was taking way too many courses. And, but I knew I had to because I was taking the AP exams because that's what I needed to get into university in the UK. So did that, got my AP exam scores and got into Durham University in the UK, which is brilliant. It's up in the north, it's near Newcastle. And I did my undergraduate BA in archaeology at Durham. Archaeology. Oop, still got you?
Yep, you froze just for a second. We lost you right after you went to the UK, which makes sense. It's a long journey.
Of course, of course. Okay, so I was at Durham University in the UK, and I got my BA in archaeology at Durham University, which is just up next to Newcastle. And then I stayed at Durham University for an MSc or a Master's of Science in paleopathology, which is the investigation of health and diet and all these kinds of things, all that kind of things related to health and wellness in ancient populations, so archaeological populations. So looking really at skeletal remains to understand the health and life ways of people in the past. And then I moved down to Oxford University for my PhD, and that was in archaeological science, but again, a little bit more of a focus on human remains and kind of the various different testing methods we have for human remains. But during my undergrad, one of the things that I'm really thankful for Durham University's archaeology department doing is they really focused on professional skills, transferable skills, and making sure that we would be capable of going into really any career. And so one of those things is I did a course in conservation during my undergraduate. And so when I finished my PhD, I moved back here to Denver. This is where I grew up. And so I moved back home and I was helping for a little bit to care for my grandparents because they'd become ill. And then I started volunteering at the museum in the behind the scenes areas in anthropology, in earth sciences, in conservation. And then that led to, I got an internship in conservation, and then Jude Southward, who's our now retired conservator, asked me to take on the conservation technician position in 2019. So that was really lovely. And that was really a fantastic way of really being introduced to the museum and getting to do this really fantastic career.
That is amazing. And I just want to point out something that you said that I think will resonate with a lot of people. And it's that idea of both being a caregiver and continuing on your career. Like you had a moment where you stepped back and you were like, hey, my grandparents need me. And that is something that's so common, especially for women in the workspace, especially for women in STEM. So I just want to shout that out because it's something that happens to a lot of folks.
Thank you. Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's one of the things that we don't really talk about, especially when we talk about getting women into science and keeping them in science, as well as, what are those other roles that they're taking on at home.
Absolutely. And speaking of women in science in particular, you told me something about how you got your internship at the museum that I'd love for you to just tell our Instagram audience here.
Yeah, so that was, I actually volunteered in anthropology and earth sciences for about a year before I volunteered in conservation. And what really got me kind of into conservation is when we were preparing for the mummies exhibit to come in 2016, and they decided to redo our mummy exhibit at the museum, which, by the way, we've got a fantastic book about that coming out, has just come out. You can find it in the shop. Sorry, shameless plug. But they brought down the mummies and the coffins, and basically all of us from the anthropology workshop were kind of pressed up against the glass that we've got downstairs, and we were like, can we please come see the mummies? And Jude was very lovely, very gracious, and she let us come in and look at the mummy coffin, the coffins and the mummies, and kind of really get a chance to look at them up close. And that was really, I'd mentioned to her that I had some conservation experience, if she was interested in having someone come in and help volunteer. And so she agreed, and that was really how I got started in conservation at the museum.
That's amazing. And you paused. There wasn't like a job opening specific to your unique set of skills. You volunteered, you made connections, and then you were like, hey, do you want to see these skills that I have? They'll be great here. Can I help you with this? So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and it was entirely, I was just like, oh, these are really, really cool things. And that's one of the things I love about the collections space and doing collections work, is you get to see such cool things. And we do have really amazing collections. So yeah, I'm always happy to talk about the collection space.
Well, we can jump to that part of the interview right now. So you've gotten to do some really cool things in your career. Can you tell us the coolest thing you've done for science?
Coolest thing I've done for science. Well, yeah, it's probably getting to work with things. On my thesis, I got the really cool experience of looking at a couple of mummies that are held at the Manchester Museum, and they're not so much what we would typically consider mummies anymore. They're more skeletons. They don't have a lot of soft tissue left anymore. But I got to investigate them, and as I was investigating them, at one point I was leaning over one to kind of look at something going on kind of in the middle of the body, and I just got this really sweet smell wafting up at me. And I realized that, of course, the ancient Egyptians used beeswax as one of their funerary preparations. And so what I was getting was that sweet scent of beeswax wafting off of this 3,500-year-old mummy. And it's one of those really cool things where, you're like, this individual has been deceased for 3,500 years, but you get that connection. You get that people cared for this individual and wanted things to, wanted them to have things, wanted them to be cared for even after they'd passed away, which I think is a really lovely and touching thing, especially given everything that's going on in the world right now. It's a really lovely to feel those connections with other people.
Oh my, that's so true. And I mean, I can't imagine what it was like to be you in that moment. Like deep into the work, you probably have like questions, you're trying to find something, you're leaning in because you're trying to see something, and then boom, honey, like.
Yeah, it was I was like, wait a minute, what is that smell? Because that's not, again, most collection spaces, we try to keep food items out of, because bugs might damage the collection items. So I was like, why does it smell so sweet in here? And then I was like, oh no, that's beeswax on the mummy.
Wow, that is really cool. All right, now tell me what the wildest thing that you've ever done for science.
Wildest thing I personally have ever done. I mean, I was at a dig in Bulgaria at one point, and we had to drive through. They'd set some fields alight, and it got a little out of control. So both sides of the road, either side of us, were on fire, and we had to kind of drive through that, which was super exciting. But probably the thing that I personally have done that's the weirdest, kind of wildest, is I was in a field in England, in Sedgefield, and we were digging a Roman site, and there was a ditch in the site, and I was digging, but I was literally up to my arm in this feature trying to get at the bottom of it, and it started to rain. And in England, the rain can be quite a big deal. It can be quite intense. And basically, yeah, I was sitting there laying on my side with my arm in a hole, and I was like, I'm going to drown in a field in the middle of England because I'm digging a site. It's one of these really kind of, you just sit there and you're like, what am I doing with my life?
I just want to point out here, Kathryn, that you just both literally drove through fire to do some really cool science stuff, and then you almost drowned. And so you're going through all of the elements. I'm waiting for wind. We talked about Earth already with the honey and the mud. So you need the wind, and then you'll be the avatar.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, eventually and then I'm like, I'm sure at some point, yeah, I'll wind up with a tornado or a hurricane or something. Fingers crossed not. But
yeah. I'm okay with just those 2 near-death experiences are more than enough.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh.
Well, of course, we're not asking anybody who's interested in these fields to have any near-death experiences of their own, but if there is advice that you can give to anybody who's interested in going into conservation or anthropology or any of the awesome things that you have done, can you tell us what advice you would give to someone interested in your career?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is make sure that you are really focusing on transferable skills. And I know that's a word that gets kicked around a lot. And it's kind of hard to really describe what those are. For me, a lot of those are things like attention to detail. You need to pay attention to what's happening, both what you're doing and what's happening around you. That's really going to help you understand a lot of the situations you get into, and really just paying attention to other people as well will really help you a lot in the long term. You also have to be adaptable. That's one of the things, is you have to kind of be like, sometimes really unexpected things come at you, and you have to be like, oh, okay. You can take a minute, you can pause, you can think about that, but you do sometimes have to be like, okay, things are changing this way. What can I do to kind of help myself adjust, help others adjust? So you have to have that adaptability. That's a really, really useful skill to have. You also have to be patient with yourself and with others. You have to be patient with the circumstances you're in. Sometimes things happen and you just kind of have to, you can't, go into a screaming fit, even though that's really what you want to. You have to be like, no, you know what, let's think about this. Let's talk about this. Let's work through this. You also have to be kind. And that's one of the biggest things I've found through time, is you just have to be kind. You have to be kind to yourself. You have to be aware of, what can I and can't I do? Not just, in terms of physically or mentally or emotionally. It's, what can I do for myself? What can I do for others that is going to improve this situation? So it's really, for me, kindness is one of those key skills, key things. And it's sometimes very hard, and it's really, our world is not set up to promote or encourage kindness. And so that's really something you have to really develop in yourself, is that ability to be kind to yourself and ability to be kind to others. And then self-reflexivity is kind of the last one. And what I mean by that is you have to look at yourself and you have to say, okay, what am I doing that maybe is introducing problems? What am I doing that's maybe introducing damage to other people? And you have to really be honest with yourself. And it's a really painful thing. It's not easy. It's not fun to really look at yourself and be like, I am the problem here. But it is something that you really do need to do. You need to look at and say, am I causing problems? Am I hurting other people? And that kind of, I think, folds into that kindness, and trying to be kind to other people around you, as well as to yourself. But again, part of that, you don't heal and you don't grow if you're not self-reflexive either.
That is amazing advice, Kathryn. And I have to say, I think that's the first time that I'm talking to somebody about like advice that they would give out, even outside of these interviews. That's the first time I've heard kindness included in that. So I just want to give it a shout because I think it's something that we take for granted, definitely, both to ourselves and to others. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's over the years, that's definitely like the biggest thing I found is like you have to be kind.
Yeah. Well, that is about all the time that we have. We might have enough. If you're willing, we have one audience question that I'd love for you to address.
Yes, definitely.
So people are interested in mummies. What a shock. They're so cool.
I know. It's people always love mummies. They're always a crowd pleaser.
Can you tell us some techniques that you use to tell how old a mummy is? Like, can you tell just by looking at them? Do you smell them? Like, what's it like?
Yeah, so it kind of depends. If they've got a lot of flesh on them, we have to scan them. So we have to CT scan them. And I think Michelle's going to be giving a talk about that on the 7th. So if you're interested, tune into Michelle Coons, our curator of archaeology's talk on the 7th. And she can go into a little bit more detail about that. But basically, there are certain markers in the skeleton. So the reason that babies come out so tiny and grow is that our bones actually fuse as we get older. And so you can, by looking at a skeleton, if a skeleton, all of their like long bones and bones of their fingers and hands and all those are already fused, we know they've got to be over 18, generally over 25. And then unfortunately, anybody who's over 25 is not going to love hearing this. Once you're fully fused, once you're fully grown, it's all downhill from there. It's only your body breaking down. Unfortunately, it's a hard fact of life. But so basically what we look for when we're looking either at CT scans of a mummy or, like in my case, actually looking at the bones, is we're looking for those unfused epiphyses, or what they're called, the ends of the bones of the epiphyses. So we're looking for unfused epiphyses. If the individual has all of those fused, we're then looking for signs of degeneration. That would be like buildup of like arthritis type things around the joints, and just kind of general wear and tear on the skeleton. Because even with like an office job, you get general like wear and tear on your body. And so that's what we're really looking for. That's how we age mummies. Sometimes we're lucky, and like the Egyptians, we get biographical information with them where, like written on the coffin, you got, oh, this is this person's name, this is their age. Unfortunately, we don't get that for a lot of skeletons because it's not written on our bones. So we've got to we make estimated, educated guesses, essentially. We make estimates, and we say, okay, we know from what we've seen in other populations around the world, these kind of features mean this individual's about this age.
Wow, that is fascinating. And also, finding out that it's all downhill after 25. I thought it was after 21, so I had an extra four years.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, it's one of those unfortunate things that, yeah, once you stop growing, it's all breakdown in your body.
Well, thank you so much, Kathryn. I'm going to go ahead and plug Michelle's talk on the 7th for folks that are interested in mummies specifically. That's a great one. Always check our website for events, check our Facebook and Instagram. That's where we post a lot of our things as well. Thank you so much for joining us. I loved hearing about your journey and about how your awesome journey to get your PhD and then how you were able to apply that and advocate for yourself after the fact. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. We'll see everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.